This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts Lindsay Poss, Jeff Cohen, Victoria Taylor. For those of you who are new to the after show, welcome to the official after show of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but it's all the stuff that we couldn't fit into the podcast. It's all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. It's still just as fun. It's still just as exciting. We still dissect. We still analyze the business implications of everything happening. But the best part is we get to do it with you guys, the viewer. We get to answer questions. We get to talk to you guys directly. You guys get to challenge us. It's what makes the after show special. Guys, we've got so much to cover this week. I will say though, notably absent is William, who I can see him waiting there now. Welcome, William.
There he is.
And muted, of course, because that's the way. I mean, it wouldn't be William if he wasn't muted.
Oh, I was saying it was a notably absent. I'm like literally here. And I have my new mic and it's set up properly. I'm basically a legend.
I thought you weren't going to show up, William. I was like, well, he just got the new mic. I mean, there's no way he would miss.
No, why would I?
This week.
I only show up.
You have to amortize the cost of that mic over like 50,000 live streams in order for it to, be cost
right. That's the only way it's per unit economical. It's
exactly.
It's just a simple spreadsheet. Every time I do a live stream, I enter a 1 in the column.
I will say, guys, for everyone who's tuning in, thank you for showing up. If you haven't yet, tell your friends about the live stream. Bring them in. Let's make it fun. And I encourage anyone who's lurking, because we know literally about 90% of the viewers here lurk. Please feel free to ask questions, challenge us, get involved. It's not scary. And we love having you here either way, but it shouldn't be scary. Guys, before we jump into news, I just want to tease the podcast as always, if that's okay. First of all, Greg says you guys are so awesome. One of my highlights every week. Greg, you're the awesome one.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
For coming every week. I just want to tease the podcast a little bit, give a little sense of what we talked about this week. It was just William and I. And we covered some really interesting topics. The first one we covered was, interestingly enough, a StarCraft story, and it was Shopify fielding a StarCraft 2 esports team, which is interesting. Shopify, a Canadian company in the e-commerce space, not in esports at all. So happy to talk about this on the live stream if you guys want, but it's coming out. A great discussion on this on the podcast tomorrow. We also talked about HP buying HyperX. I kind of want to touch on this on the live stream because I would love to, hear what Lindsay and Victoria and Jeff have to say on this.
And I introduced my new rule, which is companies can only buy other companies that start with the same letter. It's alphabet acquisitions.
Alphabet acquisition. Yeah.
It's a really good rule. It's a really good rule.
It's a really good rule. Someone tell Bobby. The third story we talked about was TikTok owner ByteDance essentially starting an initiative or doubling down on an initiative to really go after Tencent in the gaming market. So they're hiring people away from Tencent. They're building a whole bunch of talent and expertise around developing games. And their goal is to really go after Tencent. Very interesting story out of China. And then the final one that we talked about on the podcast was Facebook Gaming hosting a bunch of community tournaments, and there was a good discussion around, should this be something that Facebook goes after, and is anyone else sort of well positioned to do this? So, any of these things we can talk about. I don't know. I'll just go around to you guys first, Lindsay, Victoria, Jeff. any of these things you guys want to talk about, absolutely on the live stream.
I think we should talk about Shopify. I'd love to hear,
Okay.
your thoughts on this. I mean, is there any? I mean, Shopify is a beast of a company. They have absolutely just crushed it. Is there any business reason for them doing this outside of, their founder Toby is a big StarCraft fan and he owns a lot of the company and he has the right to do whatever he wants kind of with the company's money to some extent? Is there anything outside of that where this makes sense? Yeah, that's my question for everyone.
I mean, Lindsay, Victoria, curious if you guys have thoughts on that, why they would do this. Victoria, you especially, you're in their backyard there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the only reason I could see that they started with StarCraft was that he was a big fan. That's really the only reasoning I saw. From a business perspective, I guess, we could take this as they're just trying to stay competitive. They're obviously in a really good position to get involved monetarily. But why StarCraft? I don't know.
Here's the better question. It's not why StarCraft. And this is the discussion William and I had, is why buy a team? Why not sponsor a team instead of starting your own team?
Yeah. But did they have any involvement beforehand with esports?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
Other than the CEO blogging about or tweeting about how video game skills he felt were directly transferable and very good for his business.
The only thing I can see here, is that you asked why buy a team versus sponsor a team. I think by owning the team, they get to create kind of their own branding where it's not just slapping a logo onto the jersey or something like that. And just to be clear, I do think this is just a passion project for Toby. It probably costs very little money. It's basically a marketing expense, but the rebellion kind of branding is interesting. Shopify's whole big thing whenever you hear them talk is that they like to use I think it's the Star Wars reference where they're, arming the rebels, Amazon being the evil empire and they're arming the rebels. So I think that rebellion, and you could see that I'm not William in terms of being a Star Wars fan, but I know a little bit.
I mean, William made this exact comment on the podcast, so that's why I'm kind of laughing.
Yeah, Jeff, you're literally playing my podcast comments back.
Well, I apologize that we're just redoing everything. We can move on, but I think it's an interesting story. But yeah, I think them being able to do that branding adds a little bit to it. It gives them a cool brand persona, and Shopify really does they cater to these small merchants and kind of the kinds of people that are entrepreneurial. Maybe they're esports fans, young, millennial. So it makes some sense. I've talked myself into it. It's good.
They hired 3 guys.
Yeah. Right.
Let's be clear. They hired 3 people to play StarCraft. If you have ambitions to be mega involved in the esports scene, right? You probably hire more than 3 guys, and you probably get into a game other than StarCraft 2, right? If you're going to pivot the company into esports in a big way. This is really just they hired 3 guys and they got a lot of great press from it. And that's probably more than good enough in terms of a transaction in his mind, right? What was the cost for these 3 players? A few $100,000 at best, or at worst, I should say. This is to me just very obviously a marketing ploy, and all the press that they got was worth it in the end.
I was gonna say it doesn't seem like they're taking a big risk here.
No, zero risk. I mean, you're talking about a company with.
What's their market cap? 130 billion or something. So
yeah,
the small risk.
Lindsay, you were going to say something.
Yeah, this is just somewhat of an industry trend. I mean, I don't know if there's enough to call it a trend yet, but saw this at Comcast with the president's son starting an esports wing. Saw this with the Washington Capitals with the owner's son starting his own esports thing.
Except
here's the question:
it's not his son, it's him.
No, I know.
I was
I'm just
say,
saying. You can see even other larger legacy companies branching off into this. Shopify is a newer company, so I'm not surprised that a younger owner would just do it themselves. But the point is that even huge legacy companies or industries or brands or whatever are branching.
I was going to say, do we view this as a good thing? I mean, it's probably not a great sign for the esports team ownership space that it basically most esports teams are essentially passion projects for really rich people that we describe as a throwaway. So maybe that's an interesting thing to note there.
The comment I made on the podcast, which I'll reveal here, I guess, is that maybe this is a bad sign for esports teams, where maybe he looked at the landscape of esports teams and said, well, it's actually cheaper for me to start my own than to actually sponsor one of these teams. And I don't know if any of that factored into their decision, but it is definitely an interesting story. And William and I had a good discussion on the podcast. Probably spent too much time on this one on the podcast.
It was a good one. I enjoyed it. There was a lot of we teased out a lot of implications from this one.
That's it. And also look to the future, which I'll tease here in terms of what the future implications of this kind of deal are, and what we may see more of. Did you guys want to touch on HyperX at all, or no? Anyone have any thoughts on this?
No.
I
mean, I do, but I covered it on the podcast. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we can move on. We can move on to. Let's start with something simple. Let's start with something I'll call easy, casual here. This one was an article from IndieWire, and the headline here was Fortnite is the first video game to host a film festival with a potential audience of 350 million. So basically what they're doing is an animated short film festival that can be viewed only inside of Fortnite. And they're organizing it just like a traditional film fest, like Sundance or any of these, film festivals, except they're not giving away awards from what I understand. And the way they're monetizing this is they're allowing Fortnite players to buy a popcorn emote, I think, for like $5, like a big bag of popcorn emote. I'm curious if you guys love this, hate, it's another one of these intersection of in this case film and gaming. Does anyone think this is a really great integration, really bad integration? Curious to get your thoughts. Lindsay, maybe start with you.
Interesting. I suppose so. Doing a short form, I think, is a really good idea, because obviously the draw of games is that you're not a passive audience. So making it short and snappy, at least, I think will keep people's attention. They've had huge success with the concerts, so I think it's worth trying to branch off into new mediums. The thing that I don't always like about Fortnite's strategy is there's sort of like these random one-offs. The concerts, it was like, oh, Marshmello was great, and then 3 years later we got Travis Scott, or 2 years later. It's just like, I just always wonder about the bigger picture. If you look at this,
do you feel like there's not a cohesive strategy? Is that it behind all of it?
Confusing. It's just, my husband re-downloaded it and was like, I can't even play it anymore. I don't even know what a weapon is. There's all these, like Victoria was saying, like there's peppers, now there's popcorn. It's like, I don't hate the idea of doing a film festival in a video game, and I think Fortnite is a great place to do that. But I don't see how all these things continue to fit together and make sense.
Yeah.
And this is just another thing where it's like, hey, this is great. I think it'll be really fun. I think a lot of people will tune in. But then are we just not going to see it again for 5 years or 1 year? Or it's just it all. I don't understand the cohesion of it all. But obviously they have a huge base. I think it's a fun application. So I guess we'll see what their bigger strategy is.
William, you're itching to say something here.
No, I'm not urging. I love other people's thoughts. I like it. I think it's interesting. I think it's creative. I sort of feel like I strongly agree with Lindsay's comment. I wish these things were cohesive and part of a broader strategy, like an entree into film. I also think it's a bit of a step back that, like, why can't this be, who's the guy who does like Hateful Eight? Like, why can't it be Quentin Tarantino debuts a new digital, why don't we have some celebrity weight behind this, to really drive it as a medium? It feels a little bit disappointing in that regard. Although, but my biggest takeaway from this is like, and it's not really a helpful insight. It's just a real thought I have, which is like, wow, red versus blue has come a long way. This idea of using games to tell media stories has like really evolved from like what it was when I was a kid, and like it was funny to watch, ha ha ha, like, you know, Halo memes. So it's interesting to see it evolve.
Jeff, you wanted to say something, or Victoria?
Well, so my initial, hopefully my audio is a little better. Maybe it's not. I don't know. My initial take was that I hate this. I did see Greg's comment then about his son liking it, so I'll soften my stance maybe a little bit, but I'll stick with it. I don't, you know, fundamentally, when I think film festival, I think, you know, target audience is a bunch of 70-year-old rich dudes sitting on a yacht, you know, partying with like 25-year-olds. I don't think that, you know, this demographic really wants to go to a film festival. So I just think that it's a miss with the target audience demographic. Concerts are cool. I just don't know if you're going to get kids to sit here and watch a bunch of films. So yeah, I mean, it's a creative idea, but I think it's a flop, and I don't think it's going to be like any harbinger of the future of film festivals or something like that.
Well, it doesn't change the direction of Fortnite, right? Like, let's say this is a humongous success, like by beyond all expectations. Like, so they sell some more emotes, you know, like there's not a novel monetization model built into this. There's not a recurring event model built into this. It just feels like it's 3 years later, guys. It's stop. It's like, stop experimenting with what you can do with in-engine content and now have a strategy. Like, you've shown things, stuff has worked, like, do it now, you know?
It's funny because I felt the same way as Jeff. In fact, I put it in our newsletter this morning, like on my, in terms of my take, where I said, this feels like a miss because the demographics don't make sense to me, right? Like, film festival to me is older than the Fortnite audience. And then Greg says, you know, my son bought the emote and watched the films and he loved it, and he's only 6. And I'm going, well, maybe I don't understand, you know, who watches film festivals.
Maybe he's brainwashed by Fortnite.
Does it say
so
in
Greg,
there like what the maturity rating for these are? Because that was my first kind of question.
Animated films,
Probably
right?
pretty
So
PG.
it's probably pretty PG.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean,
And
it's
it's
hard.
like Travis Scott. I don't know. Not as PG.
And
Yeah.
to Martin's point, you know, he says it's like the business saying try everything and see what sticks. But Martin, like, I think William made a great point, which is like they've kind of tried a lot now. Maybe time to Lindsay's point, narrow it down to some strategy that feels cohesive. And it's just, it seems like a step backwards, right? We went Marshmallow, Travis Scott, like a new Star Wars announcement trailer, and now film festival, like indie animated film festival. It feels like a little bit of a step back.
Don't forget about the Cash App compound. You know, that was cool.
That was cool. Yes.
I like that. I'm telling you, that was good. I'm telling you.
You guys like that better than the indie film festival?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Jeff, but will the Cash App compound keep you dry when it rains? Huh?
Is that what the film festival does? I don't get it.
Greg says I loved Red versus Blue. I think we all did. Actually, so speaking of Cash App compound, hold on. This is like a great transition to this next story. And actually, I don't know if this is going to render properly here, because sometimes these sites don't show up properly. Actually, hang on.
That's what we do. We provide you with transitions, Paul. And this is with no prep. We don't even prep this, people. This is just off the cuff.
We some of us do.
Wait, do you guys all get together before this and like do a whole thing without me? Am I just not getting invited to these things?
No, you come in with a billion technical questions and it all ends.
I want to bring this up on a different website that will render properly. So this was an article that's been, that's made the rounds everywhere, and it's Toronto to get a spaceship like 7,000 seat esports venue. And so, sorry, I'm going to kill this because it's going to, for some reason, some sites just aren't rendering right. Basically what this is saying is, they're planning this arena downtown Toronto. It's backed by Populous, a design firm, and Overactive Media. Overactive Media owns the Toronto Defiant of the Overwatch League and the Toronto Ultra of the Call of Duty League. And basically, they're planning this 7,000 seat arena. $550 million is the price tag. expected to be completed in 2025. They say it's going to host esports, obviously, events, but also music performances, award shows, conventions, concerts, and competitions. So speaking of Cash App Compound and spending hundreds of millions of dollars on buildings, what do you guys think of this one?
Can I start being the Torontonian?
Yeah, of course, Victoria. It's in your backyard, right?
I can probably see it out my window. Well, in 2025. All right, so I'm gonna be bold. I am a huge fan.
Okay.
I'm gonna say why. So I'm a huge fan. First of all, they made a really, really smart decision in making it a multi-purpose space. So they have the technological capabilities, or at least the plan to have the technological capabilities set for big esports events where it's going to feel like you're in the action. I don't know what all that technology looks like or feels like, but it's going to be top notch. But then they also are going to make it fit for other concert, performing arts, things like that. Toronto needs this. Toronto needs this. We sell out. Obviously, when we can have live events, everything sells out. Our sports teams, doesn't matter how they're doing. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm a diehard. Toronto Raptors, obviously, they're doing a lot better. The Blue Jays, where have they been? It doesn't matter. We fill up our seats. Toronto's just a hub for entertainment. Like, we don't have, like, in Canada, pretty much, Toronto's where all the excitement is. We have a huge audience. People travel to Toronto and want to go to things.
Issue with this, but yes.
I was going to say maybe Montreal is a close second, but still, that's like, what, a 5-hour drive from here? We get a lot more tourism. So
here's the business question,
this is a smart play.
Like, Victoria, I'm with you on this, right? It's an exciting announcement. It's huge dollars. The stadium looks very cool. It looks like a spaceship, right? Mm-hmm. It adds a lot of excitement to the esports conversation. The hard business question here is, can you spend $550 million, first of all? And they've said they're not going to take any public money, right? So no public subsidies. This is all going to be backed privately. Can you spend $550 million on a venue and have a realistic chance of generating a return?
Not for a long time. This is going to take a long time. And I mean, the biggest thing here is they have to do it right. I don't know, who do they have developing it? And I think it's someone, they hired someone who develops esports arenas, right?
Populous is like a design firm. They're not specialized in esports arenas. I don't think anyone is, because there really are, like, let me ask this question. Let me phrase the question differently, right? Allied Esports is the poster child of mega venues that failed, right? Like, and they're in a bigger market, arguably, than Toronto. They're in Las Vegas, right? They're in a city dominated by tourist traffic and people coming there for entertainment, and they could not make that profitable.
Well, so Paul,
and I don't think they spent $550 million either.
So Paul, I 100% agree. I think if we look at this as just an esports stadium, I think it's doomed to fail. Particularly, if we were talking about snap our fingers and the stadium existed today, even post COVID. So, think a year from now, no, I think it would absolutely fail. 2024 or 5, whatever they said, maybe, esports has matured enough where it kind of grows into this kind of, building being necessary. But I think the key here, the difference between this and Allied, this sounds very much more like a multi-purpose kind of stadium where, when like the Cowboys built Jerry World and it cost like $3 billion, nobody said like, hey, you're only going to use it for 16 football games a year. Like, that's idiotic. I mean, they're going to have concerts in this thing. So like Allied, that pyramid, they don't really host concerts and stuff like that. It really is set up just for esports. I view this as more of a, like you said, they're going to have different events and stuff like that, award shows. So this, it may be being pitched as an esports stadium in some of the media that we're reading, but I would bet that they don't view it as being an esports stadium, as more of a convention center kind of thing.
That's 100%. That's 100% it, Jeff, is because Overactive's backing it. And you're saying that if this was purely an esports stadium and knowing like how far they have to go, how much they have to fill and how many shows or events they need to put on in order to make some money through this would be scary. A $500 million spaceship looking venue. But this is smart. This is a smart play for them. Like, no, I don't see them losing money on this, because I know that every single night, once we are back up and running, Toronto can book events. Toronto can fill a
But guys,
venue.
keep in mind, it's 7,000 seats.
That
Right? It's
that's
not
what
a
I wanted to say.
50,000
No,
seat
I was
stadium.
unmuting my mic. You don't get to take my point.
Sorry,
No,
William, go.
my problem.
Okay,
is,
so
great
hey,
minds
wait,
think
time
alike.
out. Raise the price of the tickets. I mean, that doesn't
Exactly.
matter. Supply and demand.
Put Drake in there.
whoa,
or
Come
you just
on,
book like
come
a
on,
slightly worse. You don't bring Taylor Swift. You bring like, Nicki Minaj or whatever. I don't know the equivalent, superstar or whatever. But like, you just go
Lindsay,
like
please
one
fill in
rung
the
lower.
blanks here.
Like
no,
that doesn't. That doesn't mean
guys.
it's doomed to fail.
My concern is, first of all, like a football stadium costs what, $1 billion to build?
Yeah.
And you get 40,000 seats. Is that right? 20,000
No.
seats?
Like more sometimes,
More.
60, 70,
So-
80. And if you're talking college football, you're talking stadiums as big as 100,000
Yeah.
seats.
So
Right?
the first thing I would say on like the cost per side, like cost per seat basis, this is high, right? Which is a little like, okay. But then the other thing I sort of have to is, okay, so like there'd be a separate conversation. Does Toronto need a stadium? And if so, is this the right size stadium for Toronto? And it might just make sense on those metrics. I don't know. But what kind of bugs me about this is if you take their premise that they think this is going to be like for at least partly significantly for esports, you have to believe they're going to be recouping against this for decades. They have to have like what, a 2-decade payoff period to make this back. The 7,000 seat thing bugs me more because if you believe esports is going to scale and ramp that much over the course of the life that the stadium needs to be economically generating positive returns, I think it will be outscaled by other esports venues. Like what I'm saying is it's built at the wrong point on the scale curve. Right? Because you either think that there is demand for massive in-person esports events like this in something like Toronto, in which case that growth should continue and will soon be at 10, 15, 20. Like you won't be marquee anymore, right? At a 7,000 seat venue. You're not going to be hosting worlds at LCS because they'll be doing 40, 50, 60,
Sure.
100,000 seats soon, right? So my issue is it feels oddly scaled. And it almost feels to me like this was a Toronto needs a venue. 7,000 seats is the right size for Toronto.
What can we fit?
Who's
But
backing
that's
us?
exactly.
People
But I
who
think
own
that's exactly
esports
what it
teams.
is, William.
Yeah.
But why is that a problem? Like, I think that's exactly what it is. It's like, and 7,000 seats is not that small. Like a hockey arena, I was just doing some Googling, like they're typically like 17 to 25,000. So it's not like, you throw some floor seats, like you can have 15,000 people in a concert, like that's not small. Not everything has to be
go from 7 to 15, but okay.
I've done my research, Paul. Trust me on this.
Okay. The strange look. I really think Overactive Media is probably one of the worst companies in the esports space. Okay, stay with me here. Like and I've been critical of the management there for 2 years now. I fundamentally think they've made really bad decisions. They really don't have much clue of what they're doing. And I have a funny feeling they sat around the table here and they said, well, we have like, and kind of this is the irony of it for me. We have an Overwatch League team and we have a Call of Duty League team. Now we just need a stadium and that's going to fix all the problems with both, right? And if we just have a really cool stadium, both of these franchises will be successful. Instead of actually addressing the problems with those franchises, like the irony here for me is chances are by 2025, Overwatch League is dead, is shut down, does not exist. Like if I'm a betting man, 90% chance this doesn't exist by 2025. And so they're building this, it feels like to me, because they just didn't figure out the esports thing. They couldn't figure out how to make the esports thing work. So now they need to be entertainment. Now they need to be something else. Because if you're going to get people to continue putting money and you've just got 2 failed esports organizations, that's a hard sell. If now we have an exciting big stadium in Toronto, right? Now this is an exciting story again. And it's to me, it's kind of it's just an indication of just how bad the management there is, like really total cluelessness on their part, because they haven't addressed any of the issues with their actual franchises, which is the majority of the value of Overactive Media. Like they have nothing today other than those 2 franchises. And I wonder why, if they have 550 million of backing, why not spend 200 million on a stadium or 300 million on a stadium that's 7,000 seats, because that feels more right, and go buy a League of Legends slot or go buy a Valorant slot or like actually get into.
Don't they have League? I'm pretty sure they have League. Didn't they buy
No.
Splice, right?
I don't think they have League. I think they have Counter-Strike. They have Counter-Strike in Latin America, or I think, or they have Mad Lions, I think, in Europe.
From a logistical perspective, if I were to guess, I would imagine that the financing for the stadium is completely separate from Overactive. Like, I bet they're going to rent it out, or they're going to pay a lease. So the people investing in the stadium are probably investing in completely different asset at a completely different return, scheme than the team. So it's not like that money was in their pocket and they're like, well, I have 500 million. How should I, divvy this up between like things I want to buy in the stadium? But I would imagine that's the case.
I agree with that. I don't think that they're taking on the biggest majority of risk here. I mean, I know, Paul, you're really labeling this as like a lifeboat move for them.
For Toronto, I love this, Victoria.
I was just going to say, though,
that's all that matters. That matters. That's all that matters. It's good for Toronto.
It's good for
Toronto.
Make money. No, but I mean, I don't think that they're building this with the plan of, like William said, this isn't going to be like the global hub for esports. This is not going to be one of the esports capitals of the world. I think they're just trying to just create a scene, obviously, within Canada, right? They want to make some noise, and it's an easy pivot down the road. So you're saying, like, if the league folds in five years, it's an easy pivot because the space is going to be built to accommodate many other things.
To William's point, Victoria, like they're not going to be able to get the big acts, the huge, the like 7,000 people is a pretty small stadium, right? You're stuck with sort of smallish events, and I just think this is one of the worst investments of all time. I'm not down on physical stadiums. I'm not down on this being great for Toronto, and I'm not down on this being awesome for the esports fan. What I'm down on is like 550 million on a 7,000 person stadium. Seems odd to me. I just want to read some of these. Dakota says people are really trying to pump as much money as possible into in-person esports venues. Sounds crazy to me. Maybe it'll work. Look, I think we can all argue both sides, Dakota, right? This is the reality of it. And I think, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll speak for everyone here. We're all very excited about this kind of announcement, right? This much money coming into esports is a good thing. Would I put my dollars behind it? No.
Well, I think the more interesting here is that if we take the premise that it's a stadium for Toronto, that they thought esports is so hot, the best way to market the new marquee stadium in Toronto was not like new mainstay concert venue or new Toronto Maple Leafs handshake arena or whatever. It was esports. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's true. This isn't being spun as a small concert venue. It's really being spun as an esports arena, even though, I think the article said like only 5 to 10%, or Dakota said, only going to have 5 to 10% esports.
What really bugs me about this, though, Paul, and this is just the last thing I would say, is when we all go and do Business of Esports live from Toronto, like it's just not going to be big enough to fit us. Even that's what really like.
Maybe Victoria, not my ego, but definitely the five of us. Greg says Victoria hit the key. Well, don't worry, we're going to announce clubhouses, new clubhouses starting soon, where we just pat each other on the back and tell each other how great we are. That's coming. It's the trend in esports right now. Greg says Victoria hit the key point. Toronto needs a stadium in general.
Thanks, Greg. They'll make their money back.
Although Francois, I think Victoria has an issue here. He says he's in Montreal and he doesn't agree.
Sorry, Francois.
Although, I used to live like 2 blocks from the Bell Center.
I wish I could pronounce Francois' name like you do, Paul. You got it like perfect. Francois. It's like, I don't know how to do that.
But I speak French. That's the difference.
Oh, yeah. That helps.
That helps.
It's also spell things properly sometimes.
All right. Let's move on from this, unless you guys won't have any other thoughts.
Let's keep a poll. Let's put our bets in, by the way, for this. And then we'll come back.
In terms of investors making money, that's just going to be so hard to actually like check.
I will say this will be successful. We're not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to like define that, but it will do well. To Victoria's
Here's what
point.
I can tell you with certainty: it's not going to be what's described in all these articles when all is said and done.
Well,
The
I agree with
articles are
that.
misleading. The articles are
agree with that.
misleading.
It's
I
either gonna
100%
be-
agree.
More seats or less seats or more money or less money. Like the chance that they build exactly this with this money in this configuration, I think is almost zero.
But this is a marketing play. Just one last comment. It's built like a spaceship. It's marketed as an esports venue. Like they're creating that appeal when really in reality only 5 to 10% of the events are going to be esports. But people I think are still going to want to go.
Victoria, I'll take your thought one step further. Like I said, I think this is brilliant marketing. It's the first good marketing I've seen from Overactive Media to cover up all of their failures, right? Like this is Overactive Media trying to change the narrative around their business and get people excited about their business when really their business was kind of dead in the water. And so I think in that sense, this has been a brilliant success, no question. It's all people I've seen. I don't even know how many media outlets posted this. It's at least 20 that I saw. Like I rarely see that level of coverage. Like fewer outlets covered the 425 million HyperX acquisition, right? So it's definitely like it's got mainstream appeal. The story's interesting. You're right. It looks like a spaceship. Like it's exciting. No question. All right, let's talk about. I mean, this is another silly story. We have to talk about this. I don't want to. I can't get away from this one. I'm going to try put this up and see if it works again here. Hang on. This is Soulja Boy in the news. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Soulja Boy.
Don't you remember the song?
I don't remember the song.
I'm not going to sing it. It's not going to happen.
Lindsay, go. Lindsay will sing it. Go for it.
Oh, Kiss Me Through the Phone is still on all my playlists.
So Soulja Boy, I don't know what he's done outside of gaming, but in the gaming universe, he has tried now multiple times to release a console. In the past, they have been knockoffs of other consoles. First, like a PS2 one, and then an Xbox sort of knockoff. Now he's saying he's coming back with a brand new console, Soulja Boy console, that is going to be entirely unique, like not a knockoff of anything. Okay. I don't really like. It's easy to sort of dump on Soulja Boy here. I don't want to do that. What I would like is for you guys to tell me, do you think there's a market for another console, period? Like we've seen others come and go, the Ouya, and like there have been attempts to break into the console market. Is there a chance here at all for Soulja Boy or anyone else?
If there was a chance.
Jeff, I know you have very strong feelings on this.
I'll go last.
Okay, Lindsay, go ahead.
If there was a chance, or if I thought one was actually going to be successful, I would think that it would have to be some type of novelty. I don't think Soulja Boy has the star power to do it, but like we saw with the Budweiser one, like it would have to be something that isn't really about the game and is more about owning the thing for fun, like a collector's item.
Okay.
I would.
Lindsay, can I just challenge this? Because in the article it says, so the first console he made, which knocked off Nintendo, and it was like a shoddy plastic thing, and it was running an emulator, and he got essentially threatened by Nintendo, and so they stopped selling it. He claims, and the article specifically says the claim is unverifiable. He claims the console sold 5 million units in a month.
Yeah, right.
Does this prove that there's a market for another console?
Based on his faulty claims, no. Honestly, the Budweiser story is what made me more excited about it. When they did the novelty console and it sold for 10,000, and there was a 6-pack cooler, and like if there's going to be another console, I don't think it's going to be like an actual engine to play games.
You don't think there's any celebrity on the planet with enough clout and influence to push a console of their own?
We're not talking about a co-brand. We're talking about their own console.
Yeah, their own.
To sell units, no, I 100% believe that there's celebrities out there that can sell units. To actually shift and have real gaming on said units, that would be really tough.
Okay.
It's just not like Nintendo had to differentiate, right? Like they had to fundamentally adjust their offering to carve out a niche in the market. It's just, this is a market where the logistics are winner take all. It would be hard for anyone. Like if Google said they were like sort of did with Stadia, like they couldn't do it. Like it's hard for anyone to compete in this market. The notion that a single celebrity can do it, even like a spot on target, like let's say Shroud was going to do this, right? Like, doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? I don't see a scenario where the only thing it might work is like if every top streamer on Twitch banded together or something like that, you know, and only then only in that sort of massive scale play could it have any traction. And even there, I'd have so many other questions about the per unit economics of it, aside from the marketing plan. You know, it's not gonna happen.
This would be like a novelty. Like it would be starting as a joke, like the Dogecoin, and then all of a sudden it's like the Soulja Boy console is the real deal. Like it would have to be like start as a joke and then long term. Yeah.
Exactly. Like it's more about the cultural influence than it would be about the actual gaming. Like the six pack. The fact that it had actual beer coolers in it.
I can't even tell if we're actually having this conversation or if we're all just joking right now. Because you guys are all freaking crazy. The answer is no, obviously. Now, to Lindsay's point, Victoria's point, I mean, novelty, anything can sell, you know, so like the KFC console that Ryan, you know, just joked about. Sure, like, could that be cool and like 250,000 people buy it for like $50? Yes. But in terms of like a device that people play games on and third-party software developers like EA and Activision build games for, no, it's been proven. You can't do it. You know, the last real console entrant was Microsoft in 2001 or whatever, whenever the Xbox came out. You know, it just doesn't work. There's a whole host of reasons that we've talked about a number of times. You know, really because you need exclusive content in order to break in. And then there's a massive network effect. And then also, even if you've conquered those two things, it's really hard to get third parties to make games on your, you know, look at Stadia. I mean, not many of the third parties supported it with their games at launch, and that kind of led to it dying. You know, we've seen this movie many times before. I mean, with, you know, that's kind of how the Sega Saturn died, right? Like it didn't get support from EA, if I remember kind of correctly, that how that story went down. So no is the answer. Now, could someone with some marketing muscle push a novelty item? Yes, but that's not what we're kind of talking about here. But yeah, sorry to go on my soapbox.
So I'm gonna push back a little bit. I'm just gonna ask. So Jeff, Paul did direct us to take Soulja Boy completely out of this equation, and he asked us, do you think that a new console could ever be successful? So are you telling us that since 2001, whenever the Xbox came out, you think that there is never going to be a new console to enter this market? Are you saying that you are 100% certain? Not saying Soulja Boy, but I mean, Huawei, we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
There almost certainly will. There almost certainly will, but it will be a new... It will be so different. It will be a new paradigm, right? It will be something like Oculus. Like if something like VR or has a new twist, or even if Amazon or if Google, before they shit their pants, like if they had been able to come out with something that changes the gaming experience and creates an experience that you can't get elsewhere, that is simply better and gets people to move over, and then creates the flywheel where you get players, then you get third-party developers building for it. That could happen, and it will happen, right? Like, I don't think we're going to have Xbox like 400,077 versus PS like 62 in like 200 years. Like, we're going to be playing on a different platform. You know, but do I think like some celebrity in their backyard could like white label a console and like get everyone to switch over? No, obviously not. So I don't want to be so fatalistic, like to, you know, you kind of took it to the upteenth point. But it is a massive barrier. Then it would have to do something like very differentiated to win, because we've seen it, right? Like we've seen numerous entrants that have tried to do this. Steam console, Luna, Stadia. There's probably 5 or 6 others that I'm forgetting because they're so terrible and lost to the annals of history. So yeah.
I just want to read some of these comments here. Ryan says, or Martin says, Lindsay's look of excitement at hearing Soulja Boy. Ryan says, for sure, KF console is a must-have. Ryan, I agree. I mean, we all ordered one. Greg says the Tom Hanks console.
Yes. Yes.
Little Business of Esports inside joke. I love it. Dakota says Mr. Beast could do it, but it wouldn't only be a one-off novelty, not a sustainable thing. Yeah, I mean, he could, in that he has the clout and the audience. But like, it's a whole operation to sustain a console, right? Like, you have to deal with technical issues, people returning them. Like, you can't just like whip something up and ship it out and then call it a day. Dakota says Victoria's on the money. Greg says Greg and I on the same wavelength. I think Paul secretly wants a Kardashian gaming PC. I was going to bring this up, which is I think the Kardashians could do a $99 device, something like mobile, to play their game and other like indie developer games that are in line with their brand, and make it work.
So Paul, I don't disagree. That actually is a good point. I agree with you. If the Kardashians came out with like a device that only played one game, and it was like the Glue mobile game, but you had to buy a $99 device, they would get like 500,000 people to buy it. But that is not a console in the sense of it is not a platform that plays third-party device. Like the most important thing about consoles is like you're playing third-party games. It's the razor blade model, the network effects. Like that is basically a toy. Like if you're saying someone can create a toy and sell it, yes, a lot of celebrities can create toys and sell them. Those are not platforms and they're not consoles.
I love the hole we just dug ourselves in. Now it's like, how do we define console? Because now it's like, is a Tamagotchi a console? Or does it have to have a server? Third party.
Tamagotchi's definitely not a console. We can draw the line there.
Hey, you said a Kardashian game. You could only play one game, so it could be programmed within the console.
Other indie developers too, but
like a Kardashian could sell a Tamagotchi, and I bet 1 million people would buy that. Like I will give you that. If we're going to consider that a console, I will concede that could happen.
Be a great stocking stuffer.
Bodrich says Drake could sell 7,000 OVO consoles to the Toronto Esports Stadium and run a Raptors tournament. There you go. He's got his audience baked in. Greg says, could someone create a mobile gaming console to compete with the Switch? It's an interesting question.
Yes, someone has. It's called an iPhone, Greg.
That was my first thought. Like, yes, I own it.
Like the PSP revived. Can you imagine?
Yeah, iPhones, iPads, definitely. But, I think Greg's asking a more specific question. Is here like a single purpose device, right? Just for
said the PSP.
But the PSP didn't really work.
I'm just saying that, like, maybe they could make it like really cool this time.
Why don't you think Apple has done a call it like a lockdown iPad or a more dedicated version of the iPad just for gaming? Right, where all it does is run Apple Arcade, and it's got more specific functionality or hardware. Like,
and you can download.
Would the market just be for kids? Like, what would be the point of that? Just cheaper, or would it just be for kids?
For casual gamers, right? Who maybe want something more than their phone.
Yeah, but why would they not want the?
Why
iPad
would they want that? Yeah. Like, it's like here, this could do internet, but it doesn't because we just took it away from you.
This is an amazing.
You've just described the iPhone to the iPad
product. What if they did an iPhone that didn't make calls? Like it
only did text.
People don't want to make calls.
Like you could only do Twitter and Instagram and text. Like it's great.
Just what if we take features out of popular products?
Victoria, you wanted to say something. I'll get to my point in a second. Victoria, you wanted to say something.
I think I did, didn't I? I was probably interrupting people the whole time. I
didn't hear it. Sorry.
I don't know. What did I say? I said the PSP, and then I said that, to your point, would you want an iPad that all you could do was game? But really, they did that with the iPhone, right? They just took away the network.
Why doesn't Apple create a device with better ergonomics and functionality for gaming?
For gaming. So that's a really good point. It's not about like their software where you can lock it down, like the capabilities and like you can have the actual platform just be what you can do and can't do. But yeah, in terms of holding an iPad, It's like the classic picture of someone, like some old person trying to take a picture with an iPad. It's the same thing trying to game with an iPad. It just doesn't work. I agree with your point, Paul. It could be better ergonomically, 1,000%.
I would rather them just make a case or something than an entire phone.
It sounds like you're describing a peripheral for an iPad that makes it easier to game, which doesn't.
You guys lack vision. I don't know what to say.
No, we like all of our products in one.
Right.
Well,
the whole reason why mobile gaming has taken off is because it's so accessible, because you already have the device in your pocket. That's why these games can scale to hundreds of millions of users. If every person who wanted to play Candy Crush had to buy an extra $700 box that then they had to carry around in their pocket, in addition to their iPhone that did exactly the same thing but had like a little hook, they wouldn't. The dam would be
coming from the guy who
get this guy business lessons.
This comes from the guy who does everything from his one laptop. So like,
I'm just blown away by how we can improve other businesses, like Whole Foods that only sells vegetables.
We're gonna, this is William. Hold on, this is a great segue. I want to read this comment. Sunny says it would have to be several factors coming together. The basis would be functionality rather than novelty. Perhaps a cross-platform console that can be used through multiple connected devices. That the console is the engine. Such said, the novelty with functionality, such as a patented device, maybe gloves that acts as a hyper-functional glove. Sunny, you bring up a good point, and something that I have sort of interact and had experience with in the past because it was a company that I was working with, was the idea of wearing something on your wrist that was all the computing brain power that you need, right? So it's kind of like all the brains of the phone, but on your wrist. And then everything else just becomes a dumb screen that is powered by that brain that you always have on your wrist. And I could see how potentially for kids, this is better than giving them an iPad, right? You can give them essentially a dumb screen that costs almost nothing. And if they break it, you don't care, right? It's all driven by a central, William, you're giving me a funny look, but I see the value in having dumb terminals attached, not to cloud computing, but local, call it edge computing, right? Computing sort of locally. Anyways.
The issue is the tech replacement cycle, though. That's Greg's comment. Like, the reality is the stuff you don't care about getting broken that's tech already exists is your old tech. And that's why kids have a hand-me-down market.
Greg's point is very true, right? As a parent, a gaming iPhone is an old iPhone with the cellular service turned off. It's a great point. Bodger says Google Glass. No, that like many other Google products did not work. Although I did get to play with one. And I know why it failed. It's a terrible product. Really, really, really bad.
Yeah, totally. Paul's idea is a Google Glass without the technology. It's just regular glasses.
Okay.
It's a multi-billion-dollar market we can disrupt.
Let's talk about making other gaming businesses better. Okay, this is a good segue. This next article is from Esports Observer, and it's about Vindex. Vindex hiring former Starbucks exec as COO of Belong Gaming Arenas. Okay. And I want to focus this conversation. I don't want to talk about this guy. Don't care. It's more, Vindex has stated with Belong that they want to roll out like 500 esports locations across the country. Right. And the question is, does the Starbucks experience translate here? Right. Is Starbucks the right model, assuming he brings all of his Starbucks know-how and secret sauce, whatever, to these Belong Gaming Arenas? Is that the right model in your minds for local gaming sort of hangouts or cafes or whatever you want to call them?
I can comment on that.
Go ahead, Victoria.
I do know that after Starbucks, he was extremely successful in the rollout of a cannabis retailer. So I thought this was really impressive to see someone who was in quite a traditional industry being able to take his strategy and being able to apply that to a completely different industry that when you look at the guy, I mean, does he look like he's going to fit the team for cannabis culture among youth? Probably not. And you could probably think the same thing about video games. So quick to judge, but at the same time, he's been successful in two completely different industries. So I think he has a pretty good way of just understanding, knowing what he needs to know about his markets, and probably has some pretty good strategies on how to reach them. So I don't think this is just going to be he takes his Starbucks success and applies that the same way he would to the esports industry.
Yeah, I sort of don't care about the guy. My question is, like, does the Starbucks model apply to esports at all?
Well, I think on one hand, I mean, I have two thoughts on this. First, if you think back to kind of when Starbucks started, and a lot of their corporate mantra was creating the third place, right, where people could hang out. You had your home, your work, and then kind of Starbucks was a meeting place. I think these gaming centers kind of are trying to emulate that a little bit. So I think there's some merit to maybe having someone with that background. But I think more so than that, what's important here, I mean, Starbucks is a massively successful multi-billion-dollar company. And I didn't catch what his title was at Starbucks, but having the experience of building a company at scale and rolling out those kind of locations is certainly a skill set that is probably useful as Belong, tries to roll out, I think, 500 centers over the next couple of years. Having someone that has done that, been involved in sourcing real estate, looking for locations, scaling up, actually just resourcing projects like that, it is probably a useful skill set. And, as the esports industry matures, I think we will see a lot more, I hate to use the cliche phrase of like the adults in the room, but we see a lot of companies in the esports industry that are run by 24-year-old gamers who have a passion for esports or gaming, and they had a cool idea, but they don't know how to run a business. And I do think that in some instances, having someone like that who has experience come in is a good thing and a maturing thing for the industry. So I'm all for it. I don't know the guy, but seems good.
He was in charge. He was a regional vice president at Starbucks, and his markets that he was in charge of were Florida and Alabama. Okay, so not a huge job, but not like a small job either. And like the crux of my question is, when you think about the Starbucks model and what makes Starbucks, right? Part of it is they sell something that's a total commodity and basically the same as everywhere else, but at a premium, right? And they're able to charge this premium because of the experience, right? It's not a large, it's a venti or whatever. And right, they create this idea of turning it. They've managed to turn a commodity product into a luxury product. I think this is part of the secret sauce, right? Jeff, you brought up the whole idea of meeting places. Like, I don't know if I think of Starbucks as great meeting places, but I definitely think a lot of people use it as a place to go work or read, or in some ways it's more a solitary place, I think, in my mind. And it's set up that way, right? Like maybe some of the newer Starbucks have big tables and things like that, but like the corner small Starbucks typically does not have a lot of space to do like 4 people meeting. And so if I'm thinking about what makes sort of the Starbucks model special, and I guess part of it's convenience, right? There's a Starbucks everywhere and they try and put one on every corner, especially in urban areas. Do those specific attributes translate to success in the esports, call it gaming cafe space, right? And when I think about that, I go, well, maybe not, right? Lindsay, I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I wanted to bring up. The first is that this is somewhat happening in the Asian market successfully, and obviously that's a completely different demographic, but gaming cafes do exist and it seems like they're doing quite well. So that's one thing to consider, is that this has existed elsewhere in the world and it has been successful. I don't know enough specifics about if they're franchised or if they're one-offs, but at least I know that they exist and that people go to them. The second thing to kind of consider here, and I hate to bring up the G word, but I wish that GameStop would have done this. They have the brick and mortar space. They have the retail space. They could have turned it into some type of center that we haven't seen yet. And to bring people together, or to give people the connections to be able to game on their gaming laptop, or to provide ways to test new experiences in gaming or something like that. I do believe that there's a market for that, and I don't believe that it's been fully worked out yet. So whether or not this strategy works, I think that there is a winning strategy out there, and at least if this fails, there will be more information on what not to do, because I don't think that there's been enough attempts at this yet in the North American market, at least. I would love to see more of this type of center. We talked about it with 7-Eleven.
I mean, your point's a good one, Lindsay, right? Like GameStop could have done this, right? But to me, GameStop is a worlds away from the esports equivalent of the Starbucks experience, right? You walk into a GameStop, even if you turn it into a place where people can game, right? It's still kind of a mess. It's still like games to the, up stacked to the roof. This is not like GameStop never was. And even if they had pivoted, probably never would have been a luxury experience. The question is, should these small centers, should these cafes, these esports cafes, is the recipe for success is to turn them into luxury experiences?
I don't know if I would
functional spaces.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would consider Starbucks a luxury experience at this point. It may have started, but I think they've kind of been outflanked by a lot of more luxury coffee places, at least in my coffee. I think Starbucks is closer to the middle now than it is to the luxury, but that's neither here nor there to your question, Paul. I forgot what your exact question was, whether the long should go
on the
luxury
spectrum of, this is a four walls with computers and a vending machine, right, on one end, and like a chef making a fresh pasta with two computers and really great mood lighting and big screen TVs everywhere, right? Like
I mean, personally, I think the latter sounds a lot cooler, but the reality is probably in the middle. I don't think the model of like, the PC bong, like 40 PCs in a basement, and like people look like they've been gaming for like 47 hours straight, like zombies. Like that's not the model that I think they should go for. I don't know what they are going for, but that is not the strategy I would go for. The two PCs and a bunch of luxury food and stuff that's going to be tough to scale, but I think they should definitely aim for the luxury end of the spectrum.
Martin says Starbucks crashed and burned here in Australia. We much prefer the small cafe culture. Interesting, Martin.
That's happening globally, I feel. Like Starbucks is becoming the McDonald's of coffee shops. It's just like you go to it if you're traveling because it's convenient, but if you're at home, you'd rather go to a nicer coffee shop.
The trend in retail in general, and I consider these esports cafes retail, right? The trend that is hot right now, right, is they know Amazon, most retail knows Amazon's eating their lunch, right? And so the trend is to move towards more experiences, right? Something you can't get on Amazon or at home. And so, there's the logical conclusion that esports cafes have to be an experience to draw you out of your house or to get you gaming in there instead of, in the comfort of your living room. That's the crux of this, I think.
Yes. I mean, you're 100%. You're right. Because otherwise, if it was just about having a PC sitting in a dusty room, like you're right. No one would leave their basement. They would just, you need to have those extra elements, the tournaments, the community, the entertainment, the fact that it's cool and you're hanging out with friends and meeting new people. You need that. So
you don't want Chef Mark making fresh pasta. All right, that's fine.
I mean, Paul, this all sounds good. I love pasta.
Throwing ideas out there.
I mean, I don't know that I agree that it needs to be something like super extra majorly special because
no pre-made pasta, Lindsay. It has to be on the spot. I want to see
lobster straight from Maine. No, but I mean, people do go sit in Starbucks for a variety of reasons, and I could see that. I mean, Paul, to your point, GameStop does not have anywhere near the design and the ambiance, but I brought them up because they do have a strong brick and mortar network and they do have name recognition. So if they did choose to pivot on their, physical appearance,
they also don't appear to have the awareness that Amazon is eating their lunch. They seem they seem to be oblivious of that fact. No. So that might be their first problem.
GameStop like 3 months ago was much more fun to talk about. Now it's just like, oh God. Anyways,
well, it was up. I hate to belabor the point. It was up 100% today. So
I know.
It's starting again. We're back.
Don't buy GameStop. Go buy GMBL. And this is not it's not me telling you to buy stock. All right, this is not advice.
Yeah. We've all heard the disclaimer. You're not a financial advisor. Blah blah blah. Anyways, back to me. So I don't think that you have to make this like super extra special or like build a crazy community. I mean, I walk to my local coffee shop every day. I walk to the post office every day. Like, not every day, but the point is that there's ways that you can do these things that are somewhere a little bit less like, I'm so tired of hearing like, you need community, you need connection. Like, first of all, no, you don't. And the pandemic has helped that significantly. Everyone just wants to go outside and then be by themselves because none of us know how to interact anymore. When I think about like cities or college towns or anyone who's in my age group, like, yeah, they're willing to go sit somewhere else that's not their own home for a couple hours once a week. It would be easy to build an experience around games that would motivate that.
The more I learn about your life, Lindsay, the more confused I am about where you live and what you do on a daily basis. Between the 7-Eleven, we should put gas station, like
Lindsay,
sushi or something last time.
Every day. This is
she just walks to the post daily. Yeah. Daily
Actually,
walks to the post office.
As a side note, I did an entire 70-page report for the Postal Service when I was in grad school. And the post office is actually a huge cornerstone for small communities. Like, there's like coffee pots in them, and people visit them every day.
Post offices.
Just as an anecdote, Paul once told me that he literally Uber Eats Starbucks, and it is across the street from his apartment. So he does not walk across the street
once, almost daily.
Yeah.
And Lindsay is doing daily strolls to the post office. So this is very interesting. Really getting an inside look into people's lives here.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, but the point is, like, I do think that especially young people who have, income and no kids, remote work is becoming more popular, college towns, this kind of thing would be extremely popular because people go and they sit places for a couple hours, at least once a week. And I don't think it needs to be like extremely big and flashy and extremely like indented in the community. Like, I'm so tired of hearing about this like connection community we need to build. It's like, no, like people will do stuff if you make it fun and cool. Like, that's it.
That's literally what connection and community are.
No, that's like such a deeper, like everyone needs to like go and make friends and build a connection and get experience. Like, no. Sometimes people just want to walk up, order coffee, sit down, plug their computer in and play some games and then go home.
You will be the first time you taste that fresh pasta, though. You will not want a game anywhere else.
Listen, Paul, if you want to open that place, I will populate it.
Tess, amazingly talented member of the Business of Esports team, says, I think gaming cafes have huge potential here. The one by my school was packed every night. Yeah, I mean, no question there's potential. No question. I think, and we'll end on this because I want to move on, but the question becomes what model works. And I don't think anyone has really figured that out yet completely, right? And it scares me a little bit when you're going to roll out 500 of them that you haven't really figured that out completely yet. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Starbucks guy takes my pasta suggestion, but let's move on. Guys, this next story, this is not so much a story as a research report. And I thought some of the findings here were interesting. It was research that was done in the UK on gamers and on games specifically. The report was done by they did a study of 1,000 UK adults, and they looked at a bunch of data. And I'm going to take this off for a second because I want to ask you guys. The first one is a giveaway here. So they asked, first of all, how much the average gamer in the UK spends on video game and in-game purchases. And when they ranked it by game, interestingly enough, not surprising, Call of Duty was on top of that list. Super Mario second, Grand Theft Auto third. When they talked about the demographics of the average UK gamer, first of all, what do you think the average age was of the UK gamer?
28.
Interesting.
37.
No, older. 46.
Wow. Okay, it's interesting. Lindsay?
I was going to give a range of like 20 to 38. So.
Oh, that helps. That's a great guess, Lindsay.
Listen,
I was going to give a range of 0 to 120.
I would go somewhere between like age 13 and 62.
Okay.
Nothing over there.
confidence
Shot
in
in the dark here.
That's
Let me
how
just-
I weigh things.
I'm gonna say, guys, and stop me if you're at all surprised by any of this. Okay, just cut in if you're surprised by any of this. It says the average UK gamer is a full-time professional in his late 30s and a dad of 3. That's the average.
What?
How does that last one? I don't understand how you average being a dad of 3. Like you're like, oh
There
well,
were
this is
some
a mom
dads
of
of 2,
5. This is a
some
dad
dads
of
of 4.
1. This is
Yeah.
a dad of 2. Okay, dad of 3.
Most
Like how do you
often.
average that? Like that is not a
Jeff, do
in
you
all of
not
my
understand how
in all
average
of my understanding of how averages work.
I think
do
we're
not
talking about
understand how you average.
mode, not mean.
Okay, well that
It's
makes
still
sense.
average,
I mean,
and just take the
Round it.
integer value of that average. It's so
Yeah, but you can't. How do you average a man and a woman?
I think it's mode.
so.
what are you talking about, Jeff? You have 1 kid. Paul has 0 kids. The average of your kids is 0.5. Doesn't matter your gender.
Well, if you're saying the average is a male, what about
Guys,
the
I don't think
females?
this is that important.
Okay, hold on. Let's keep. That was surprising to me. Maybe you guys are not surprised by that, but I thought that was older, trended older, and the fact that our parents of multiple kids, and that's the average again, I think is interesting. As again, I was surprised by it. Out of the UK's 9.2 million gamer households, a majority, have at least 2 consoles, which I also thought was interesting. Again, stop me if you guys are surprised by any of this or want to comment.
Is it on average 2 consoles?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat it? 92%.
The majority of the 9.2 million gamer households have more than 2 consoles.
That's surprising.
Have at least 2 consoles.
Like the one that doesn't work anymore in the closet or active consoles.
That I don't know. They say men and women dedicate almost the same amount of time to gaming, which again is definitely I think not what you would assume. It's not the common assumption. And if you're in a long distance relationship, I don't know how they tested this. If you're in a long distance relationship, the most played title by gamers is League of Legends. William, can you explain this maybe?
This just feels like a study to me. Like, is it like what's the sample size? Whenever I hear data like this, I want to know what the sample size is.
2,000 UK adults.
Okay. I
Let's
was
see the
hoping it was like
methodology.
1, my cousin Chris. I mean, if we take this as an accurately well-conducted study, it's kind of interesting because it shows gaming as, I mean, it's basically describing if you told me the whatever methodology they use for average, leave that aside, but the average person in Britain was married, 35 with 3 kids. Like, they're just describing an average person is what it sounds like to me, which shows how mainstream gaming has become. The thing that shocks me is the console number. I just
Really?
I don't, I'm surprised. I would think most people would be a single platform household. And didn't they have a spend number in this article too?
They did. Let me pull it here. So, by the way, they also found that the majority commanded a salary in excess of £40,000 a year, and the spend. Actually, I don't think they had a spend number. Another interesting stat was 3 in 10 people admit to skipping showers and meals to play.
Gross.
30% of the people they polled.
Like, okay, cool.
To William's point, I completely agree. The statistics of it being the average person is late 30s male with 3 kids. I can picture this because I went older with my guests because I know that there is a huge percentage of gamers that fall into the like 45-year-old moms who are playing Bejeweled on their phone. I know that really drives home that number. And then I'm thinking that male, when you take in the younger gamers, that maybe that's where they get the male dominance. And then what was the last one? The children.
Father of three.
I mean, again, that's just like
Average.
We're going back over to the first stat of it. Maybe there's a lot of mothers who are playing Bejeweled on their phones and how many kids they have. 3 is pretty high. So, but those statistics, I can figure out how they've like taken them each separately and like tweaked them into like what that person looks like. But I agree with William that the 2 consoles was the most surprising for me.
Well, there is actually data on spend too, Victoria, which was the average UK gamer spends $300 just not on consoles, on video games and in-game purchases per year. 300
See,
pounds.
that seems this study's weird. That seems low to me.
That's low.
You're earning
300 pounds?
300 pounds.
Seems low.
So you're
That's
earning
like that's like 6 games.
Yeah.
Just hear me out. They said this average is 140,000 in income, right?
No, 40,000 pounds.
Oh, 40,000. Oh, okay. Okay, then that seems right. That seems right then. Yeah.
Are they counting mobile as a console here? Like,
I don't think so. I mean, rarely, like a Switch would be, but when they use the word console, I don't think they're counting a cell phone.
I wouldn't hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope not.
Did they talk about how they got their sample group at all? Was it a self-selecting? Was it an opt-in survey?
Lindsay, the researcher, coming in with the good questions.
Because I'm just
trying to figure out how they did an average. I don't even understand how math works.
Average to say, Jeff.
Interestingly enough, Lindsay, and you're not going to like this, the study was done by a utility, like an electric utility, because they wanted to make the point that gamers who leave their console in standby mode could save like a bunch of money by turning their consoles off. So I guess they commissioned this study to figure out, how many hours per day people were playing versus not playing and things like that. How they did the study, it's not in here.
Yeah, but these people who are skipping meals and showers need to charge their controllers, so they have to leave it in rest.
Weird. There is one thing that's surprising to me. If you pull up that list again, Paul.
Yep.
One thing that's very surprising to me is that FIFA is much lower than I would think in the UK. I thought FIFA would have been, if not number 1, would have been number 2. And then Super Mario being so high was odd because they don't have microtransactions, do they? So I don't know what they're spending in Super Mario. So maybe that's just because that game happened to come out that year. So they said, I spent $60 buying Super Mario. But yeah, all these games that don't have microtransactions, like what are they spending on after the game launches?
Like the fact that Grand Theft Auto is still on this list is also like
just amazing,
unbelievable. Chris says survey held in a Belong Arena in London over the weekend. I think that's true. And Bodrich says, did they give the median as well? Bodrich, no, there's definitely not enough good data.
Bodrich is asking a lot of the good questions. He's
Bodrich
like Lindsay.
Says,
I mean, he clearly gets it. Not like me.
Adults equals over 18. So 1 60-year-old plus 2 20-year-olds is an average of 33, skewed based on sample size and set. Same goes for income, but interesting nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, 2,000 people, there is a formula, right, for how big the sample size needs to be for it to be.
Sample size only needs to be a size of 40. However, that's if you have a perfectly random group of people. So given that this is a survey and people are self-selecting into taking it, I'm not necessarily surprised that it skews older, because if a utility company like knocks on your door or sends you an email and you're 22, you're probably going to ignore it. Whereas someone who's older might be more likely to open it and look at it. That's just, one of the million.
They probably did not use G-Power for this study.
Yeah, it's not on Mechanical Turk. But yeah.
All right, guys. We've got one last story here. Actually, well, 2. Do you guys want to talk about the NHL DreamHack deal? Is that interesting to anyone?
I think that's it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about. I mean, Jeff, you probably.
Well, I don't know if it really is. It's not. It's interesting. I mean, you
probably have some thoughts relative to the NFL and how they're sort of going after it. That was my only thought. But the story here was the NHL announced a multi-year deal with DreamHack, where DreamHack's going to operate their live and online esports competitions, their NHL Gaming World Championship. It's a multi-year deal. The dollars weren't disclosed. They had a sponsor with HyperX. There's not a lot of detail here.
I think it's cool because it's the first time, I don't think DreamHack has really done much in sporting games previously. I think they've been mostly shooter games and MOBAs and whatnot. So I think it's cool. We're definitely starting to see a lot more of this where the leagues are starting to realize that, their electronic sports can be a revenue driver. NHL is interesting because that game is not super popular. You guys Canadians will hate me for saying this. Hockey is not.
It is the best.
Hockey is not super popular either. But it is. Like NHL probably sells, I don't know, 2 or 3 million units a year. So it's much smaller than like a FIFA, which is, they sell 25 million units, maybe have like 40 or 50 million players active. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know how successful it's going to be at scale, but I think it's going to be a cool one to watch for sure.
I was going to say, in terms of their game, I feel like maybe they've hit kind of like a creative roadblock. So maybe they feel that they needed a partnership like this and to figure out what their next move is in esports beyond their game, their one game. I don't know.
Yeah, it's also just most of these leagues don't really know what they're doing when it comes to esports, right? They need a partner that can help them actually execute. And in my mind,
I'll say this. I understand this a lot more from the NHL's point of view than from DreamHack's point of view. Like the NHL has nothing to lose. They run this event. It's a marketing thing. It's cool. It gets some headlines. They write some articles about it. But like from DreamHack's perspective, I don't know if this is going to justify the capital expense. I don't know what they're doing to put this on, but I don't know if the audience will necessarily be there for it. My take. William, I don't know what you think.
Right? DreamHack needs this because, and I think where I've been critical of DreamHack specifically is their business is at risk, right? You have a lot of the big publishers bringing tournament and, tournament management expertise in-house, right? Activision Blizzard does all of this in-house. They don't, work with a third-party tournament provider. EA is different, but there's sort of been this move towards moving more operations of tournaments in-house and more expertise in-house. And I was always worried DreamHack might get squeezed, right? Like you're the middleman here. And it's always tough being the middleman. And I think going after like sports leagues like the NHL is in some ways, like surefire business for them, right? The NHL is not going to bring that functionality in house. That's extremely unlikely. And so in some ways, I think this is great for them because it's probably some of the only business they can really count on in terms of the next 5 years or 10 years. William, I don't know if you had a different thought there, but
I don't know. I mean, I sort of agree with you. Like, it seems like this is a place DreamHack needs to go. Like it's just like I didn't want to cover this because I don't really have like strong thoughts on this other than like, oh, let's see. This is definitely a wait and see for me.
It's hot take night, William. You got to give your hot takes. I mean, you got to have a thought. But
my hot take would be, what if they were hosting esports events, but they took away the event? So it was just a room that you can't, because some people just want to go stand in a collective space.
Is this a joke on Paul's innovative ideas? Because you lost the plot. You lost the plot there.
Is there fresh pasta? Because then I'm there.
But before we move on, I just want to because I'm giving the hot takes tonight. I think that your point about the NHL less likely to bring it in-house than the publisher, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I would actually say, or let me rephrase that. You might be right.
You guys are doing deals with the NFL to do all this.
Well, so you might be right, but I think it is more like the NHL should bring it in-house more than the publishers should bring their esports in-house. No, because the NHL at the end of the day, the NHL's job is they're a media business. They do entertainment. They host events. They put on games. They sell media rights. They do broadcasting. What does that sound exactly like the business model for an esports league? Like a publisher's business model.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say a publisher's business model is develop and create titles, sell those titles through retail, continue to develop the title afterwards, sell microtransactions. It is a totally different business model than, sell entertainment products, sell media rights, sell tickets, sell sponsorships, which is exactly what the NHL already does. So wouldn't you think the NHL should be running their own esports league a lot quicker than Activision Blizzard should be running their esports leagues?
If they had the people and expertise, A, and B, if they understood how to move an esports fan into a real life hockey fan and vice versa, right? Like if they understood how to take that 18-year-old, NHL video game fanatic, right, and move them into becoming a Montreal Canadiens fan, then I would say, yes, it makes a lot of sense for them to bring this in-house. I think fundamentally they don't know how to do that. And this is why I think most of these leagues will be reliant, and the teams will be reliant on outside expertise to be able to accomplish this. I agree with you if they were really savvy and thinking very long term that they would be all over this. I think the mistake some of them made was they bought Overwatch League teams when maybe they should have been buying like a franchise in NHL or an NBA or something like that. But the point is most of them don't recognize the opportunity. They still have to be convinced. And I mean, you guys spend a lot of time with NFL teams. Now I think they're starting to realize the opportunity. But I think a year ago, you probably had to bash down that door just to convince them that this esports thing was interesting for them.
Yeah, fair.
Long term, will they eventually have some of that functionality in house? Maybe, right? Like a company, and this is like not a shameless plug, like a company like EEG that has tons and tons of resources and great vertical integration and tons of ways to monetize and bring all kinds of resources to bear. The reality is like the Baltimore Ravens can't do all that themselves, right? That's just not their core competency. And so like long term, do I think they'll move there? As teams, probably not. As leagues, maybe a little bit. I still think they will rely on outside companies for a lot of the functionality and a lot of the monetization. Chris says, Golden Knights were the biggest things in Vegas last year. Every NHL activation at HyperX was a dud. I mean, Chris, do you think it was because they just didn't understand the esports audience and should have outsourced it? Like, do you know if they were doing it themselves internally, or I'd be curious. While Chris is answering, we have one last story and it's kind of silly. It was just fascinating in the context of the NBA Top Shot, like this massive, wave of investment. But I saw an article even more sort of crazy, if you want to call it that. I think it's less ridiculous, but it's kind of crazy. And this is from looper.com, and the headline was the most expensive in-game purchase in gaming history. And according to the article, the in-game purchase was in Entropia Universe. I don't know if you guys have ever played it. William, have you ever played it? And supposedly, it's a universe with multiple planets. So there's multiple planets that they've created with their own theme, finite geography, and resources. And in 2011, one of these planets was purchased for $6 million. And they were selling resorts on these planets for as much as $635,000. Now, as of 2019, these planets and real estate in this game are still for sale. But that $6 million is the record. And so in the context of this, all the NBA Top Shot kind of craziness, as of like even 10 years ago, these kinds of digital assets were being bought with the idea that they were going to increase in value. Anyone, I'm curious, any thoughts on, it's a game I think almost none of us have even played or heard of, which I also think is interesting. William, what's the historical significance here of this? What's the
Well,
Do
you
you
do
know some of the
remember
story
these
behind
old
this?
GDP of EverQuest articles, right? That used to come out where they would like calculate the GDP of MMOs based on pricing the items, and they discover like they were larger than Bulgaria or something. I mean, it feels like 6 million. Like, and I'm super bullish and a big believer on gaming and all of these things. That is just so high. Like, that's just so high. And it's just like, because it's like at that point, like you could make your own game. Like plenty of good games have been developed for less. Like if that's what I mean, I'm sort of, it's a bit of hyperbole, but that's my first reaction. It's very, very high. Second reaction is it probably is true though, right? Like I do believe that some person somewhere paid that amount of, it was probably some conglomeration of people because it sounds like it was a resale scheme. But like, yes, like games are big enough. I can see that being a business venture people sink money into. It sort of makes sense. The third thing is, again, this is sort of the thing I said first, now I'll say last. It shows how far we've come. Like I remember when it was big news that Eve had these big battles and somebody who they spent $10,000 on a capital ship was killed, right? And now it's like 6 million for a planet. It also shows you, by the way, more games should look into these fixed scarcity resources because they really are a very powerful way for publishers to monetize, and I think they're underutilized. Those are my thoughts.
It's interesting. Martin says, I don't get how they can say it's a fixed 10-to-1 value. That isn't how currencies work, right? Surely value changes. How can that be worth that? No, you can fix conversion, like conversion rates on currencies.
Triangle. You can have what is it? You can have monetary policy, fixed exchange rate, and something else.
Like there are countries that still have fixed exchange rates to the US dollar, right?
You can do it. You can do that.
They don't fluctuate.
Manq. Go read No, I'm kidding.
That was my economics professor. Ec 10, freshman year.
Wait, Manq taught you?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Ec 10. Yeah,
that's funny.
Wow.
I mean, he did the lectures. I didn't often go to them, but he was the professor.
Was teaching you Ec 10 and you didn't show up?
I mean, I learned. I'm like Paul. I just learned by reading or whatever. Yeah, I mean, he teaches the freshman year economics course at Harvard is taught by Manq. I didn't realize he was like a guy until
geeking out over
he was on the cover of the textbook.
Instead of Soldier Boy is my kind of
I mean, that's just waste, Jeff. Manq was there.
If I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self, I would say, I would give him that advice, I guess.
Probably no one was asking questions. He was like, does anyone have any questions? Everyone like,
I want to know the kid who challenges him. That's the kid I want to meet. Chris says NFTs sound like an amazing money laundering vehicle based on average purchases announced. I mean, Chris, I'm sure you've been following the whole NBA Top Shot thing. The prices are crazy for videos you can go watch on YouTube, with
Lindsay, I want to hear your opinion on NBA Top Shot.
I don't want to give my opinion.
Please give your opinion, Lindsay.
Anyway,
you have to give your opinion, Lindsay.
I suppose there's worse things in the world.
Martin says, am I missing something? Martin, specific to what? Chris, the world's most interesting. Chris, I don't know what that link is to. And I cannot copy it from here. Martin says, I want to look this guy up. How's it spelled? Someone will put it in the chat, Martin.
I have a quick question about the NBA Top Shot. So I checked it out and I understand how it works now. And I actually think it's quite interesting. And maybe they're not a pioneer in how they set this up, but it's the idea that obviously it's like a loot box. So it's like a pack of Pokemon cards that where you don't know where you're going to get. And I understand that they're completely sold out. So you have to essentially go on waiting lists. And if you can't buy a pack, you have to go to the marketplace to buy ones that are being resold. What I think is great is that obviously on the exclusivity of the pack, there's tiers. So you can buy cheap packs, more expensive packs. And then I'm assuming your chances of getting a really rare card go up with a more expensive pack, but your chances are still going to be really low. What I find really interesting here is that you'll have a highlight reel that there's only 50 of them ever made. So it really builds that want to have it, right? It's like there's only 50. And then I'm thinking like, okay, well, this whole planet for $6 million, there's only one planet. But I actually feel like the motivation to own something could actually, like, I think it could almost be a bell curve. Like when there's only one, you could care less. And then maybe it's like when there's just a small amount, I'm just thinking about it that way. This idea that you're in one of 50 to own one highlight reel. I really like the way that they set that up. I thought it was pretty unique. And again, I don't know if that's just unique to them, their model, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
I mean, other than the fact that these videos are actually not unique, right? It's artificial scarcity. You can go watch any of these highlights on YouTube, right? They've cornered the market on official ownership of the highlight, and they've decided how many people can own it. Again, completely artificially. There's no real scarcity when you're talking about ones and zeros.
Scarcity is scarcity, Paul. I
think it's
I don't know what else
because
to tell you.
I own all the highlights. It's called youtube.com.
Has anyone,
scarcity is scarcity. I'm telling you, if you dig into this rabbit hole, you will discover that there's very few genuine sources of scarcity. Most scarcity is artificial, right? Like,
here's my question: how does it work with the NBA? Like, do the players get compensated? Does the league get compensated? Like, how does this business model work? I mean, I think it's fascinating, and I kind of was joking. Paul and I had like a long debate about this, and I even commented on his LinkedIn post where he compared it to the Tulip Mania. I mean, I see this going up for a while before it probably inevitably crashes down. And, this greater fool theory of investing, sometimes works out a lot longer than you think. And there are plenty of alternative assets out there. When you really think about them, they have no intrinsic value, but that doesn't mean they're not worth something, right? There is no reason why a Picasso is worth anything. It is literally an old ass piece of parchment with some colors on it. It's
one
worth
small
nothing.
Difference though, Jeff.
There's only one of it.
There's only one of them. And we can prove there's only one of them, and no one
else.
But
can Paul,
Picasso.
But that's not true. Home. You can get a very good what is it called, the print or whatever, like that. Just there's I could get you a picture of the Mona Lisa that you would not know it's not the Mona Lisa unless you're like an expert.
But those aren't the two same items. What we're talking about here when we're talking about a video highlight, the item that I watch, the highlight I watch on YouTube versus the highlight that they give me in on Top Shot is identical. Like literally down to the 1 and 0 is identical. That's not the same as a Picasso. The print is different from the original.
For all intents and purposes,
only one.
It is exactly the same. But yes, I do see your point. But I guess my point is just that just because we can't see the intrinsic value or it doesn't throw off a cash flow or something like that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't hold its value, right? Like Beanie Babies were valuable. Like there are Beanie Babies right now that are probably worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're useless in terms of like reality, but that does not mean they don't have value. So that doesn't I could see this being like, I'm bullish on this. Let's put it that way, at least in the near term.
But even Beanie Babies are a physical thing that how many there are, right? And it's
this is the business of esports. You are the most digital man I know. Like if you're telling me that your problem with this is that the themselves are digital, everything is digital nowadays.
As long as it's unique. What they're selling here is the same video I can go watch on YouTube. This is my issue. So
it's unique.
No intrinsic value.
It's unique in where it resides.
Yes,
it's like it's where it resides. It's under your account, and you see it like you own it, even if it's just in your portfolio, whatever it's called. Your bank.
There is
whatever.
Intrinsic value because you
I don't think there's
it's a different screen than the YouTube screen. I have a lot of things I can sell you.
I know this isn't your point, but what matters here is it's not the item, right? It's all the mind games. I think it's absolutely brilliant how they've created the value here. It
not intrinsic.
Kind
value.
of.
Of course, it's not intrinsic.
It's adding. The whole product here is they're implying ownership of something that's cool, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. It could be a picture of a cat. And it doesn't matter. They're implying ownership, and you can't have the internet imply ownership just by you typing it to YouTube. It's a third party saying this is now yours, and that's the value that's being attached to these products.
I mean, I understand the pitch.
Like you're
think-
the person who's proud of his World of Warcraft gear. Like it was World of Warcraft that
But I
taught
don't go
me-
around going, it's worth millions, guys.
but what is dollar worth, right? Like dollar worth is just a stand-in for intangibles utility, right? It has utility to you. Yeah. I'm quite serious. Like
no one's gonna give me US dollars for it, so it has no value.
That's not
Other
true.
than
If there
to
was a
me-
secondary market, people definitely would.
Yeah.
You're telling me
So
people buy cosmetics on the secondary market.
you have a great
And
point,
that's a
which is
tougher conversation.
scarcity works badly in non-market situations. What you're describing is there's no market, right? Like
There is no market.
Scarce products without a market can't have value because there's no market to create the value. But scarcity is good, and I would really urge you, like, dig in, like,
Paul's
literally,
core
like,
argument. Sorry to cut you off. I think Paul's core argument is that there is no scarcity here.
There is none. It's
That's
fake
Paul's
scarcity.
core argument. Yes.
So what they
and
did is they created the market that doesn't exist, like William was saying. It's the
But
creation
William's
of the
wrong.
market.
There is real scarcity and there is fake scarcity.
yes. There's
there's
artificial scarcity and there's real scarcity. Like gold is scarce, right? I can't go and there's a finite amount of gold. I can't
Not
go
if you're
make
an
more
alchemist.
gold. But not if you're
Bodger says
okay,
NBA
Mr.
Diamonds,
Too
which I
busy
love.
sleeping to listen to Mankiw.
And Greg says Top Shot has agreements with the NBA and the PA. To I think, Jeff, you were asking that, which makes sense, right? It's the only way they could really get away with this. Otherwise, it really is just like videos copied from YouTube. Chris says if the prices were more down to earth, this would just be a skins gambling convo. Yeah, sort of, right? I mean, yeah. It's just, again, it's I almost would have liked it better, right? If we took pictures of dogs and cats that people just took pictures of their dogs and cats and started selling those and trading those online, because at least then it's not just something I could go watch or see somewhere else, right? There is
probably where all this is heading, realistically.
Yeah, no one steal that idea. I'm gonna do.
That was my idea.
There you go. We'll do a Business of Esports dog and cat NFT. Guys, on that note, that's all the topics we've got. As always, I like to finish with what are we playing this week, even though we know Jeff didn't play anything. Jeff, did you play something this week? I mean, you've got a baby. I get it. It's not.
I didn't play anything.
Okay, there you
You
go.
gotta ask me something better. I feel so left out during this conversation.
Well, if you
can change that, my friend.
That's true. I can.
You have a phone. You could even just start there.
William,
I have been playing Neo 2 and Heroes of the Storm, but honestly, I haven't had much of a chance to play this week. I'm a little behind. I even haven't played the new Mario game that I got for my Switch. I got to World 5 and I had to stop. It makes me sad because I've been so busy. But I'm looking forward to actually getting into Valheim. Probably this weekend I'm going to do some serious reps on Valheim.
you'll have to connect to our server. Martin says,
Yeah, when I get that invite. Paul,
it's in the mail,
it's like
William.
You're like the person who's like the wedding invitation is in the mail. I swear we mailed it to you. That's what it's
Martin says, Jeff, what do you wish you were playing this week? There you go. That's a better question. And Bodrich says, no BlizzCon online. Paul was right tonight. I mean, Bodrich, was there any doubt that they were not going that they weren't going to announce new games? Really? Are you surprised that nothing interesting was announced? Activision Blizzard is not in the game making business anymore. That's just.
It is actually pretty amazing that BlizzCon happened this week and we didn't even talk about it at all.
Because there was zero interesting announcements. I mean, find me one announcement that was interesting. Overwatch 2 not coming out anytime soon. No new expansion for World of Warcraft announced. Okay, they're re-releasing Diablo 2. They're re-releasing World of Warcraft Classic Burning Crusade. What other re-releases did they pull out?
Yeah.
It's about Bodrich says disastrous. It's the downhill slide of Activision Blizzard that I've been calling for 2.5 years now. They have not invested in any game development, so I don't know why anyone's surprised at this point. William, I know this hurts you to hear. I know it's It's like
it doesn't. I was disappointed by BlizzCon this year. I have to say, like, I was hyped for the new Diablo 4 trailer, and I was like, oh, that's it. Like, that's it. I was a little down. And even Nintendo Direct, I went back to and discovered they have a new TAC RPG and things. Like, even Nintendo Direct, I was like, oh, not Breath of the Wild 2, but yeah, this one I felt a little sad for. BlizzCon, BlizzCon. I'll just, for the record, guys, there's no confusion. It's my favorite gaming event every year historically.
Agreed.
Can I interject with a comment? And it's going to take us down. Maybe it'll be a short path, but I think it's interesting with what we just talked about with the NFTs. Are we at a point where we're going to see this? I know there are some companies that are playing around with blockchain for microtransactions. Is that going to be a thing, like where the auction house kind of that they tried with Diablo 2 or 3, whichever one, becomes a reality where these might, kind of like William said, they create scarcity and only have a certain number of items, and then it basically becomes an in-game economy where you can buy and sell things.
Yeah,
the
auction house.
World of Warcraft's auction house works like that.
Plenty of MMOs have functioned.
But is it all on the blockchain? Is it like scarcity? Like, where are we relative to that?
Well, but there's scarcity created by they're scarcity created by the game engine itself. Like, only so many rare royal robes drop, right, per cycle in the dungeon. And so, like, the bigger thing here though is like the challenge is injecting real money into the economy. That's the interesting thing, because that's when that was the challenge. The Diablo 3 had integrated.
WoW does it too.
Yeah, it's very difficult to integrate with real money, but it's very high potential. I agree.
Well, yes, I'm sure it creates a pay to win issue as well. But like, it seems like that kind of economy, and with these NFTs, like, you could create a very, like, it would make a lot of sense, I feel like. And it would also, I'm mostly excited about it because then it would prove Paul wrong, because he'd be the first one out there spending $50,000 for like some sick ass sword that really is worth nothing. And then I could be like, yeah, this is exactly what I told you, Paul.
So let's be clear. I would never spend on anything like the WoW allows you to spend US dollars, right? You can buy a WoW token. It's $20 and it has a fluctuating exchange rate because it sells for a certain amount on the auction house based on people's demand for it. So in other words, like, the WoW token converts to a month of subscription time. So people who play the game a lot and grind the game a lot, who have lots of gold, right, who don't want to spend the $15 a month subscription, can go buy WoW tokens with all their in-game gold. Me, who maybe doesn't have a lot of time to play, I can't grind, millions of gold every single week. Well, it's very easy. I spend $20 and someone who's done a ton of grinding gets his month of gameplay for free and I get my gold. It doesn't change the fact that I can't go buy the royal robe or whatever William said, right? Like, that item is going to have a very specific drop rate in the game, and it will either drop or it won't off the mob. And I think this is how games do it right. Like, pay to win, where I can just go spend $50,000 to get a sword because it's cool and it's NFT and it's blockchain, to me will never work. People just don't want pay to win scenarios, no matter how much I can prove ownership of that item.
I look, let's do a separate podcast about this. You're wrong. There are models that address this. Like, this is a solved problem.
I never said there was a problem, William.
Oh, okay.
WoW does it right, I think.
Yeah, I think you can make it better than WoW. But anyway, that's this topic for another day.
Okay. Greg says, yes, Blanco's block party is a good example on blockchain. And Bodrick says, isn't that to control inflation as well, though? No, I mean, yes, it takes, no, it's not. There are other inflation control systems like repair costs and things, Bodrick's like that, like things that take currency out of the system. There are other mechanisms in WoW for that. And in WoW Classic, it was like buying consumables and things like that, right? Like things for teleports and where you have fixed costs to be able to just continue playing the game. That's a whole rabbit hole.
Or just leveling your enchant profession.
Lindsay, what were you playing this week?
I played a lot of Mario again. It was fun. Mario
Are you
Party.
further than William?
Huh?
Are you further than William? Is this
In what?
in Mario? He said he was only at like World 5 or something.
Oh no, I've been playing like Mario Kart and Mario Party.
Okay. Cool. I just played a little bit of Valheim on the weekend. That was all I had time for. Like literally half an hour to go kill the final boss, and that was it. And I got carried big time. On that note, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're still in here, if you stayed the whole time, all of you guys, Bodritz, Chris, Martin, Greg Carney, Greg C, Greg L, all you guys, thank you so much for tuning in every week. Please tell your friends about the live stream. You guys know we do this every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget, listen to the podcast tomorrow. It's a really fun podcast. We talk about 4 really fun topics, William and I. It's going to drop tomorrow. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. William is just dancing his butt off every single day on TikTok. So we need those followers. And stay tuned for my minute. I do a 3-minute video every week. If you like it, let me know that you like it. Covering the 3 top stories of the week. On that note, Lindsay, thank you. Victoria, sorry she had an emergency. She had to run. Thank you. William, thank you. Jeff, as always, thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. We will see you guys next week.